Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dave. I'm joined with my co host, Greg. We are the Unconventional Therapists, and this is your guide to literally nothing, especially today, maybe. Not just kidding, Greg. Greg's going to take a lead on this episode.
Yeah, so I think that what, this time of year towards like, finals and everything like that, we want to throw something in towards the end for all the students that are kind of a huge part of this, I think. And I know that when I was leaving school and a lot of leaving school is I think if I remember, you're kind of at your, I don't know, internship, I guess, and you're doing the work. And I was always so stressed about which interventions should I use. There's so many, this, that, and the other thing. And so it can be really helpful to them to kind of like have a few solid ones. But I think to talk about interventions that we find useful and that people can kind of apply in their own way, I think it's always kind of the best thing where someone comes to therapy, they got something going on, and they have something kind of simple that they can use and use over and over when, because you can't be with your therapist 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
absolutely. So our episode today will be kind of covering some of Greg's favorite interventions that he's been finding useful or just ones he's been utilizing more frequently, I guess, in practice. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's how we're gonna dig in today. But before we do, I just want to give a shout out to new Patreon members and also just remind everybody our video episodes are up on Patreon and nowhere else. And also, we do our best to try to um, do bonus episodes, which has now kind of turned into, I guess, a little bit more of a personal look
Another
uh,
person.
on the other side of what happens with those wacky unconventional therapists that you've grown to know so well.
Yeah, and like, obviously we apologize if, a week or two goes by without an episode. We're just both kind of like managing new situations. Dave, I'm sure like we never really get a chance to talk about how that whole job thing has been affecting you. Um, I was angry for you. I'm typically a little bit more angry. You know what I mean? That way. I think it was silly because I know, but I also kind of really identified with your video because often I feel that what was happening at your other employment is what happens where you and I work together because that's sort of um my other kind of job, I guess you would say. It's not like my what I consider my like main job.
Mhm.
It's my other job. And sometimes I feel like when I go in there, people are like, "Does this guy is he like half in, half out?" It's like a joke, kind of.
Sure.
And it's like, look, I'm just trying real hard to kind of be in a lot of places at once and trying to do the most amount of good I can. And I can imagine like having this same conversation with like someone where we work and them kind of being like, "Hey, look, we gotta kind of go our separate ways because you can't really be here fully." And it would hurt, but I think in some ways I would have to like look inside and be like, "Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess in a lot of ways I can't give it my all, which
Yeah.
is hard."
Well, I mean, we've also often talked about sometimes feeling almost stuck
Mm.
and feeling like it's hard to change, but super relief, super relief. And you don't have to be stuck. And yeah, that I think that's probably been the biggest thing that has hit home to me is you just got to make those moves, and sometimes it's hard to make them. So things play out in a way that maybe is for the best, and I'm just rolling with it. And life's been on that end. Life has been smoother. Not on other ends. Life has not been smooth at all recently.
Um,
So it's but I think that's more that we can probably share on the bonus apps just to kind of keep people aware of how we're doing and all that stuff. But I did want to give a shout out to some of our new members, as we like to. We got Oliver, who joined as a free member, and then he also reached out on the social media. I'm almost positive this is going to be the same Oliver. What would be the odds? And it turns out Oliver is a horror film director, and I was like, wow, I am so blown away that here we have this horror film director reaching out on the non-horror platform that I participate in. So I was really excited to be able to chat with him and kind of, yeah, just I think it's interesting to see people in my other realm also interested in this. But then our boy Joby Joe Buranowski. I never
Burn.
actually said his last name out loud, and now I did, I'm like, I just butchered it, and he probably hates me right now.
No, no, no. Beautiful Polish name.
Joe joined our bonus episodes tier, so Joe's a longtime listener, keeps in touch. Also, I going through the whole process of becoming a professional and been sharing his steps along the way. So really happy for him. And the achievements he's making. And I think, is that it for now?
I think that's it for now. Yes.
Okay. So shout out to the newbies and thank you to everybody that participates in the Patreon. I appreciate, the input, the comments, the questions, the updates in life, because I notice other people now sharing their life, and it's just cool to see.
Great to see. And look, so I'm so tempted right now because I was telling Dave before we got on, I have this idea for a bonus episode that I want to kind of run through tomorrow. And I think it really applies to what you either are or currently going through, Dave. So I think it's going to be really interesting for you to kind of hear this thing. I'm going to bring up two things. One is during this bonus episode, so if you guys want to get into the bonus content, this is going to be important. I'm going to bring up and talk about the most important psychological book that has ever been written that I've came across, and it will shock and amaze you when you learn what it is, and surprise, I think. So stay tuned for that. I mean, it's really it's really something that's kind of hit me, and it's so simple and it's so profound. And I think that if you listen to this bonus episode coming up, maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but you'll just have to wait and see because
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. So, without further ado, I would like to discuss some of my favorite interventions. And, listen, what's funny about this kind of stuff? We're always trying to learn so much, and it's like every once in a while take a step back and be like, or come across something that I wrote and say, oh my God, I used to use that thing all the time, and I never do anymore. Right?
Hmm.
It's like things, and I've kind of been more working on lately getting like a structured process going. Because both of our, I don't know. Well, for me, like the unstructured nature of my sessions has been a strength. I kind of just rely on like intuition and for something to just kind of naturally come up.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of having something a little more structured. And when working at the hospital that I work at in the partial program, they use this thing the first day every day. And this is something that's kind of become a little bit of a useful thing for me, and it's called functional analysis. I said that a little weird, so I'll say it again. Functional analysis. And it's just this really systematic process, which isn't something that I normally enjoy, but it does do something that I think is very important. So what essentially is like you're creating a behavioral chain on paper. So you're writing down three things. One is the antecedent. Dave, you'll remember this from rational emotive behavior therapy, right? So it was like antecedent, the ABCs, really basic CBT. It's like CBT 101. So say something happens, an antecedent, a trigger. You're not getting along with your boss at work, and when they make a remark about your work, and it gets you all worked up, right? So the antecedent is your boss's comment. The behavior would be you maybe withdrawing or doing less work or kind of like taking an extra long lunch or something like that. And the consequence would be your boss continues to pursue you or continues to be stressful at work, right? So the idea here is to essentially what we're trying to do here is try to understand, is the actions that you're taking bringing you closer or further away from your perceived goal? Like, say in this scenario, your goal is to be a better worker or have a better relationship with your boss or just have work be less stressful. You have to look at the things that you're doing. So it's almost like it's it's not saying that this is your fault, but it's saying like, hey, look, this is your responsibility and you have the power to do something about it. So it puts you in a place where you're like, I have some agency here to look on paper, just objectively, take all the emotion out of it and say, these are the things that's happening. Is this working out for me? And what are the things that I can do to kind of change this? Right?
Yeah.
And so do you have any thoughts towards that? Because
Well, I've been using this throughout my entire career because this is like the main
it's the juice.
framework that we use for behavior analysis with so working with individuals with challenging behavior. This is like the first thing that is instilled in you is you look for antecedents. So you're trying to this is really important. Like this, I always came from the framework of looking at other people's triggers and their precursors. So precursors would be the behavior they display right before the behavior that we're concerned with. So some people might pace, some people might start like tensing up, like little things like that, or like mumbling under their breath, swearing, things like that. Um, the behavior obviously is the thing that you're is the challenge, I guess. And then the consequence is super important because the thing you want to look at, and we're kind of talking, I guess, from the observer role, but you could even do this for yourself. Look at all the responses in the environment to try to figure out what is reinforcing this behavior, what is causing this behavior to happen more frequently than it should, and try to change to the response so it's not reinforcing this negative behavior.
And it's super like ABC, so it's super simple. But the what I think is interesting about this is like between the antecedent, so the trigger, the event, the situation, between that and the behavior, a lot of work can get done. So people tend to think like, all right, there is a trigger or an antecedent or an event, and then there's the emotion, right? And then from the emotion comes the behavior. But that's not really how it works. So it's like just because you're at a funeral doesn't mean you're going to be sad. You're at a funeral, which is a benign event. I know every event is benign until you have thoughts about it, right? Events are just, so you have a funeral, you have some thoughts about it, and then you create the emotion.
Right.
So then, before the behavior, it's like, well, what are you thinking? Oh, we use the example of the boss. Oh, like he doesn't respect me. Well, what's the evidence of that? And then you can kind of really use that CBT work there, where you're challenging the negative thought or challenging the
Yeah.
all or nothing thinking or whatever the cognitive distortion is. That's a good place to start to find them, um, which I think is wildly important, but also not the end game in terms of therapy. I know that Dave and I have kind of started to rely a lot more on ACT, and we'll talk about other ways to kind of challenge thoughts or just not really give us thoughts as
Yeah.
much salience as we had in the
Well,
past.
and the other challenging part is you're asking people to take themselves into like think about a situation where you struggle, and you're asking them to identify things that they might be thinking typically. And so many times people will say, I'm not having any thoughts when that happens. It just happens
Mhm.
because they're not in the situation, so they're not able to like, you know, like collect that information or put themselves back there, or it just seems to happen so fast they don't even realize the thoughts that are happening. But I guarantee you there are thoughts that are happening. There is something happening in that brain that's making that's like triggering, even if it's happening like in an instant. There's some connection to that brain that's telling you like there's some danger here, or this is something I need to react to.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. I also think you know, the next I guess that's like pretty simple and like, that's pretty straightforward and that's just kind of like how we can leave that one, right? Um, the next one for me is very important too. We've talked in the past about becoming someone you would admire, and I think with that comes with the idea of focusing more on what you want to do and not as much about how you want to feel. I think that's a huge shift. And the next one we're going to be talking about here is behavioral activation, which I've always thought of as kind of so simple and so easy and so on the nose that it's like it seems like a little absurd. It's because behavioral activation is just like short term, it's goal oriented, and it can treat almost any mood disorder by replacing avoidance and withdrawal with positive values based activities.
Yeah.
So rewarding activities. And this is, it's so typical for someone to kind of be in the frame of mind and we hear this so often. I will start going to the gym. I will rebuild that relationship. I will start, re-engaging with my children or cleaning my house or getting back, whatever it is that you used to do that you used to enjoy, you'll start doing that again when you feel better. And the goal with behavioral activation is to try to do the things without feeling like you want to at the same
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like it's a big tall order to really understand that like the focus of your attention is what drives your mood, and if you are doing the things that depression needs you to do and anxiety needs you to do and avoiding, then that's exactly where you're going to stay,
Yeah.
right?
I got two thoughts on that. So one of the things I used to always say to one of my patients, because he'd be like, he talked about all these lofty goals he has for himself, but he was like, not, he kept saying, like, I just have no motivation. I have no motivation. So we used to talk about, um, you don't just wake up with motivation for the most part, especially when your mood is not great. You're not just going to wake up one day and say, hey, all right, let's tackle this. You
Mhm.
have to create motivation, and you create motivation by engaging in goal oriented steps, right? And that's what you're talking about here. Short term goal oriented actions that are going to help them start to build motivation. So you create motivation versus just waking up with it. The other thing is, it sounds super simple, but when you're at rock bottom, like depressed or so anxious that you're like frozen, it feels impossible to think of what you're supposed to do, even though you kind of know. So you do need sometimes that person that's going to reflect these things. And so right now I have this individual who just started me 2 sessions down, rock bottom. His whole life has basically kind of just crashed. He's all alone. He had a family, dealing with some grief and divorce and all this stuff, loss of job. And he keeps saying, I don't even know what to do.
Mhm.
So, but he's like dealing with the depression, the anxiety. So it's like, all right, well, let's just think about this. Like, what are some of these things we need to start tackling? And it's easy to for him to like say it once when prompted. But if you would just go home, he says it's like it's just empty. Just feels empty. He can't think of it. So behavioral activation is kind of identifying what we need to take action in that will be helpful in getting us to move forward, right?
Yeah, and even if it starts with just like typically like a 5 minute thing, like there's a 5 minute rule associated with behavioral activation, and it doesn't take a whole lot of motivation to do something for 5 minutes, and you might be like, oh, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work, but it's so funny. Like I do this all the time in like group therapy because people will be in that exact place that you're talking about, and I'll say, well, if we shift the attention and we start engaging in something that we think we should enjoy, it's funny how like our mood can shift, and I'll ask someone to like hold a smile or something like that, and they'll do like reluctantly smile, and then for a second you can see it where they're kind of like laughing at themselves or embarrassed, and it's like, well, your mood just changed right there for a second because you're engaging in something, you were breaking the cycle, and that's sort of the goal of this thing. Look, we talked about how Aristotle says you are what you repeatedly do. Depression needs you to, if you want to be depressed, you have to do depressed things. You have to isolate. You have to stay in bed. You have to not be taking care of yourself. You have to thinking negative. You have to not be eating right. You have to be not be sleeping. You have to not be have any activity level. Like it needs you to be doing certain things. Why not do something that Dave is probably going to talk about next week, the opposite of what it wants you to
Yeah.
do,
Yep.
right? But we won't get into that. And it's not just about staying busy. It's about it really is about, am I being someone that I would admire, and then there's a lot of values work that goes with that to like sort of um and you know what, some of my interventions that a little bit ahead of this are going to explain, how do you find those things that that person used to do in order to kind of feel better, right? And that's important too, because it's like you can't just be like, oh, go ride a bike. Well, what if that person, like, that's just not a thing that they would ever enjoy?
Yeah.
But
They need to, yeah, it needs to be something that means something to them
right,
in some
right.
way. Yeah.
Or sometimes if that's not, you don't have the ability to find that, um, then you kind of just have to use like what it means to be human. Like what have humans done historically to kind of be betterment? You know what I mean? And I really think, Dave, I don't know if we talked about this, but lately I've really been thinking that like, um Yeah, so I'll tell it real quick. And tell me if I've told you this. It was a nice day and I'm walking a patient around Butler. It's got a beautiful sort of the grounds are beautiful. The landscape's designed by Olmsted, the same guy that did Central Park. So it's like this beautiful grounds. And we're walking and there's like this little bird on the ground. You know when like a bird is like someone busted his wing or something like that. Whatever happened to him happened to him. He had a rough day. Um, and the guy I was with said, "Oh, that's so sad." And I was like, "Oh, well, well, what's sad about that?" Just because we're running out of things to talk about. I'm a therapist, right? And we're going for a walk, so I have to say some shit like that. And he goes, "Well, I mean, I guess it just kind of can't be a bird." And that like really struck me because it's like, yeah, you're right. And that is sad because he's lost his opportunity to be what he is intended to be. And and then I started thinking of, I know I've brought this up, like the ships. When I was in the Navy, the ones that sat in dry dock, sitting in the same ocean that it would be in if it was sailing, sort of crumbles and decays.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because that's not what ships are meant to do. And so it kind of like bring that back to like you see it in nature. You see that happen in nature. Like things
Right.
just it's like human beings, well, animals in nature. I've been trying to observe that more. I think there's something there where they have this like intrinsic, they don't wonder what to do. It's just built in what they do, right? But human beings are once we've like developed, as we evolve, we develop like so much space in our brains that we're able to plan, we're able to do all these sort of things, like too many things, that what it means to just be human is kind of like we st we store that somewhere else. And where I think we store that is stories, you know? That's why oral traditions are so important. That's why heroes' journey tales are so a tradition. Those are the stories telling you what it means to be human. That's why we have archetypes. That was why
Yeah.
we have all these things because we need these sort of external things to remind us what it is that we are, which is
Think about this thought too, Greg. Humans are the only living creatures that if one aspect of us is depleted or injured or something like that, can still have a whole fulfilling existence.
Mhm.
We are not just one thing, and that is something that I think we don't remember a lot of the times. So for example, this gentleman that I was referring to earlier, who his his family has fallen apart. He's lost his job. He's super depressed. He still has an opportunity to live a fulfilling life if he can bounce out of this place that he's in. If he can still move forward in some capacity and live some sort of existence as a human. You can't say that about a bird whose wing is doesn't work, right? It's like a deer. If a deer or some kind of animal is injured, we a horse, what do? They put him down, don't they? I think.
I think something about glue. I don't know. It's pretty dark, but like, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like and they kind of get, and that's when you see depression in animals, right? You kind of can like see it, right? It's like, oh, that thing looks sad as hell because he's not able to do what he's supposed to do or able to
Yeah.
do. And like with human beings, you're right, we can shift. That
I
thing can
guess I guess domesticated animals are the only other animals I can think are different because their purpose is us.
mm,
So they can exist even when injured and not able to do because like they literally live for the people that they support and have bonds with.
but maybe that's the thing that's like so like the existential dread, the stuckness. Maybe it is because there isn't one way to be human. There's a million ways to be human.
It's should be the most um I don't know, hopeful or optimistic thing, but instead it becomes that yeah, existential dread, that anxiety of what do I do now? Where do I
Mhm.
go?
What does it mean to be me? Am I
Yeah.
me?
Can
Um,
can I have another existence after one is it feels like it's over?
and of
That's
course,
the midlife crisis.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know what? Oh God, and that's gonna go right back to this other thing that I'm gonna talk about in the bonus episode. Jeez, I wish I could say it now. Okay, But moving on, well, actually, let's just say a couple more things about behavioral activation. One is that it's important to track it. It's not like, hey, because we want to know how you felt before, and that's not going to be great. And then we want to know like what you did, and then how you felt afterwards. Did you regret it? I mean, did you feel a little bit better? Did you notice anything? And then kind of track that over time. It's almost like you guys are agreeing to this, like it's sort of like a contract. And sometimes it might feel like you're not getting anywhere, but in time, it's wildly effective. It's like one of the most effective forms of therapy. Um, I would add probably exposure in a lot of ways to this as a really important form of therapy. I think that's pretty self-explanatory though, right? Like exposure is going to be important in all
You
forms of
think
it.
it's self-explanatory, but then I hear people talking about it and they like are almost describing it. And I'm like, you know what that is, right? And they,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's exposure therapy. And they're like, oh, it is.
I might save that one for you though, because that's a super important one. It's up there. So for me, the next one, I think this is three. Um, I would it would have been cognitive restructuring here, but in I would say even the past couple of years, it has changed from cognitive restructuring to cognitive diffusion. Because I think that sometimes trying to fix thoughts keeps us too locked in with those thoughts that don't really deserve your time, right?
Hmm.
And it's like I've used the metaphor of having like being in a pool with my family. And if I'm struggling with my thoughts, I'm holding a beach ball or a volleyball under the water, and that's me dealing with it while everyone else is playing, everyone else is having a good time. Or I can just let it go, and the ball's going to be there, and it's going to be floating around, and I'm going to see it, and it's going to annoy me, but I'm free to engage. The one of the better ways I've heard it now is like there's people should check out the unwanted party guest on YouTube. They make a great little video, just like Google act videos unwanted party guest, and it's like I'll explain it like this. So you have a party, Dave, and all your friends are there, and they're all in the backyard having a good time, and everyone's kind of really getting along, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so happy. These are all my friends, and they're here, and they're having a great time. And then the doorbell rings, and it's that guy you hate. And you go to answer the door, and you're like, oh man, you can't be here right now. You can't be here right now. This is too much. And you slam the door, and then he rings the doorbell again, and you go back, and you open the door, and you're like, come on, man, you can't be here right now. This is too much. And then you slam the door again, and you're like, "Well, I got an idea. I'll just wait by the door, and if I wait, he can't get in, and no one will be bothered by him." But meanwhile, your party's going on, and you're not engaged in it at all. The alternative to that is you open the door, you let the damn thing in. He could be there, but you don't have to talk to him. You don't have to engage with him. And then you might even notice that he's making a couple friends of his own out there in the corner. You know what I mean? Like there might be some use for it or something like that. But by not trying to keep him away so much, you've kind of let it in and just changed your reaction to it or changed the salience. It's like, it's he's here, hell with it, right? You don't
And
have to
then,
argue, right?
and then the next thing you know, 45 minutes goes by. He's had one too many White Claws. He's dropping his pants at the party. He's flirting with your parents. And, he's just being super obnoxious and inappropriate. And all you can think is, I should never have opened that door.
No, Dave, that's not how this thing works.
That's not, oh,
Yeah,
different
that's the
scenario.
opposite of it, right? Now
Yeah.
you gotta let him in, and
He's
you let
offering your youngest son marijuana.
him.
It's like
Oh,
he's
my youngest,
four.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I was young, but I love that there's so many different kind, like even the thought, like singing the negative thought in the happy birthday song, or
Yeah.
or just saying over and over again, oh, I noticed I thought this, I thought this, to just kind of like essentially you're just taking the power away from the thought. And there's all kinds of different ways, like um, there's mindfulness ways where you just imagine, you close your eyes and you imagine the thoughts as leaves on a stream, and you're sort of observing them instead of like you just kind of like passively watch them go by, passively watch them go by as clouds. There's a great passenger on a train or passenger on a bus. There's so many great sort of cognitive fusion techniques that you can look up and use um, ACT has a lot of great metaphors where you can kind of really dig in with that. We all know I like a good metaphor. Um, so diffusion. Any thoughts on diffusion, Dave?
I use this. I actually didn't even know that was the term for it.
Oh,
Because it's just, but it is like something commonly used.
oh
It's
yeah,
funny because saying it out loud, I'm always like, oh, they probably think this is gonna be ridiculous. And sometimes you get that feedback. They're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But when people actually use it, I do often hear how effective it is. And
absolutely.
the thing I will often tell people, because I'm big on not trying to avoid things. I've been talking about that a lot over the past, year or so. Uh, Avoidance is such a huge problem, and trying to avoid negative thoughts or discomfort or whatever it is that you're trying to avoid is just going to bring it on even harder. Those thoughts are going to just keep trying to come in, like Brian at the party.
Absolutely.
It's Brian, right? That's at the door at the party.
I think so.
Brian's either like your best friend or he's like an enemy. Those are the two Brians in your life.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to Brian in my life. Oh my God, yeah, I do. I did have a Brian in my life. Well, not a great one.
See?
Yeah. So I mean, they didn't do anything to me, but things didn't go great for Brian. But yeah, I mean, you're that's the whole idea. Like you don't want to be in a position where you're having to avoid your own thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're gonna like all your thoughts, but understanding that they don't really mean a whole lot about you. And from this conversation of cognitive fusion, something that a lot of people need to hear is the difference between ego dystonic and ego syntonic thoughts. So, like, if your thought bothers you, then it's not a good representation of who you are. So, you don't really need to pay a whole hell of a lot of attention to it. I've thought about it like, even here's how I try to use my thoughts. Like, think about going to a buffet. You don't love everything at the buffet, so you just don't use everything in the buffet. You pass right by the Brussels sprouts and the lima beans, and you get the chicken wings and the mashed potatoes, right? Like, you're not mad that that's there. You just take what's useful and take what's actionable, and like, you can notice that the other stuff's there, but it doesn't have to be something. You don't have to be like, oh my God, what kind of place would have lima beans? This is ridiculous. And then you stay with it, and you're there, and you're asking like the manager to get rid of the lima. So now you're giving that thought way too much attention, and it just doesn't need to be that way. Because when you do start to give those negative thoughts attention, or you try to avoid them, your brain's going to push so much harder to kind of, because it's going to identify that as like, oh, there's something important about this, or there's something dangerous about this. So your brain, as a survival mechanism, is going to show it to you over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So don't try to push it away. That's not the approach,
Right.
right? Right, Dave?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can be, it's funny because someone just brought this up the other day and I hadn't really talked about it in a while. And they were saying that strategy is just the one that is their go-to for the intrusive thoughts. They kind of just they do the leaves on the stream. I had another guy that would tell me he would do like cars passing by, he's on the sidewalk,
Hmm.
and he would actually thank the thought and then like say, but I'm all set right now.
Thanks for
I
trying to
have I don't have any need for you. What's that?
like, thanks for trying to protect me, because that's
Yeah.
essentially what it is, right? Like, even people will be like, well, how I've had bad thoughts about like my kids getting her, or like maybe I'll flash someone or swear in a really weird spot to swear. But it's like, if you really think about those things, they're trying to protect you from things. They really are. They're highlighting your values instead of saying something negative about you.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for people to start to understand that your thoughts are not an indicator of who you are. You don't choose the way you think. You choose your actions. That's it. You are what you repeatedly do. We'll say that over and over again. That's very important to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also there's tons of ways to think about it. We talked about the change in the soda machine. That's a way to think about it. You're not going to be mad that there's nickels, dimes, and pennies. You're just going to take the quarters and use them. I've also just thought recently, Dave, of using, like, I don't know what card game to use, but if you get a hand in like Rummy or something like that, if you've got useless cards, you're not mad at them. You're just waiting, right? You just discard them, or whatever. It's not like, hey, these are my cards. I'm going to use the ones that are actionable, and the ones that aren't, I'll just either discard them, or they can just be there, and if I need them at some point, fine. But
Like
otherwise,
Uno.
Oh no, yeah, probably
Like
is.
I don't need these yellows right now, but at some point they might come in handy.
I might, and you might think like, well, my these kinds of thoughts never gonna come in handy, and it's like that's fine. Then they can just be there, and
Yeah.
and when you pick up the other card, you can use that. It's fine. You don't have to. I mean, it's just not something that's urgent. We spent a lot of time on that one, but I think that's an important one.
Yeah.
This one is wildly important for me too. So like values, like values discovery. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. But I think finding out the things that are important to you are, in terms of like, your career, your relationships, just goals identification, right? And like having something to aim at, so having something to work towards, that is not so like values are different than goals in that they're more of a compass than like a place that you land, like, and if you're violating your values, you'll feel that. But I think identifying your values is important. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. Like I said, one for me, my best way is kind of just thinking about people who you look up to, whether that's in media or in real life, and trying to really dissect like what are those things that I think are interesting or worthwhile about that person, and how am I applying that in my own life?
Yeah.
Um, it's just very important. I think, and I think like it kind of comes back to that thing, doing what is good versus what feels good. You know, um, Not seeking comfort, ease, and pleasure, seeking difficulty and you know hard work,
Hmm.
struggle, even sometimes is important. All this stuff's important.
Yeah. I also like to just kind of use values in the realm of that incongruence that we have talked about in the past. When you do things that go against your values, it's going to leave you not feeling good about yourself. It's going to leave you with feelings of shame and guilt and just feeling like you're not a good person. And if you allow it to go on too long, you then start to justify or lie to yourself
Mhm.
about why you're doing it. And then that just compounds and compounds, right? And then you become this person that you don't even like. And you just like overall feel like I'm not a worthwhile person. So
And of
it's,
course, because
yeah,
you're not, it's like what we talked about before. It's like you're not being you. You're not being the story that you are comfortable with. Like
yeah,
you're living the wrong kind of story. It's like something's hijacked your values, just like what we talk about when we've talked about substance in the past. It's like, okay, so now your behavior is driven towards this thing. It's not values based. It's seeking comfort and it's seeking pleasure. And that's when we talk about hijacking the reward system, because the reward system really is doing the hard things that you think are going to make you better, right, Dave? Like school and like having to be an intern and all that stuff, that shit was not easy. It
right.
was, when you think of like the stuff that's made you better, it's the chosen hard things,
Yeah.
right?
And it was so easy though, I will say, when like that last stretch of school, because like we had a goal, we had an idea in mind of what we wanted to do. Like you and I specifically, I will say, had a goal of like how we wanted what we wanted to do and why in finishing school is important. And I can say I saw others who we were around at that time, and I don't think everybody else. There were some that you could tell didn't have as clear of a goal
Mhm.
of how they were going to use it, and they were struggling more than you and I with how difficult things were. Like
Well, we
we acknowledged things were difficult, but we didn't care because it's like we don't have a choice. If I want to do this thing, I got to do what I got to do.
That's right. And like I can specifically think of one specific person who was like a
Yeah.
great person.
Yep.
Um, but when things got hard, it was like, nah, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Trying to think of how to make it easier rather than just power. And they had all the potential in the world too. And
Uh,
that was the frustrating thing, I think, for us watching somebody else. It's like, no, don't do that. You can do this, but it's their journey. So you got to also respect it at times.
yeah. And so that leads me to kind of sort of the last one in a way. And this is one I've used, I think misused in a lot of ways. Um, it's this is my second session sort of how I begin the second session almost every single time. Because if you're thinking about the first session's a lot of assessment, a lot of figuring out where this person was, where they are now, where they want to be, what's getting in the way, a lot of like stuff like that. You're kind of like doing a conceptualization of the person. The next session, you're really kind of like trying to figure out like where to go with this, right? So the miracle question for me, and I'll tell you how I do it. I kind of just say to the person, first, if they're spiritual, that kind of comes out in an assessment. And if they're not, I'll say, what if you wished upon a star? What if there was a genie? What if whatever? Before you went to bed, you wanted these symptoms or this issue to disappear. When you wake up, how will you know that the wish came true? I'll 9 times, like, so often people will say, I'm not gonna say 9 times out of 10, but often people will say, "Oh, I would just I would wake up and I would feel good." And it's like, well, all right. So you're relying on a feeling to start changing your life. That's the first step. Like maybe that's an issue. Maybe that's when you can start to use like values, or maybe it's like, well, what can we do? That's when you use behavioral activation, right? Like, so maybe it's not about how you feel. It's like, well, say you did feel good. Say you woke up and you felt great. What would you do? And then they start talking about things that they would do. And you'd say, all right, well, maybe we can start doing those things. And instead of waiting to feel good, we can engage in those things. And by engaging in those things, we can kind of start to feel a little bit better over time. And that's, oversimplified, but it's a really good way to start to understand where they want to be and kind of what's getting in the way. And something
Yeah.
I always add to that is, all right, well, tell me a little bit about a time in your life when you felt like you were at your best. And then, when they talk about this time, sometimes it's like, well, I was working, or I was busy with this, or I was exercising. And you kind of like find the thing that,
That's missing now. Yeah.
yeah, right. And like, it's kind of a really helpful thing where it's like, oh, well, you were exercising a lot back then, or you were eating right, or you were in school. Oh, so you had like a goal and you were working towards something. Like how can we incorporate some of the things that made you feel at your best back then? How can we kind of add some of those things to your life now? So to like sort of introduce that process. And that is something that sort of creates future orientation, which is, I think, an intervention in and of itself, right? There's
Yep.
no relief from like this kind of stuff without this idea or this vision of you doing well in the future. So, like, how like it's just another tool of trying to figure out like what's worked for them in the past, and like what can you borrow from that to kind of like jumpstart.
Another place this one is used from what I've seen is also in couples therapy.
Yeah.
I've seen them use this one as kind of a way to envision for each other what it would look like if things were perfect in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that can be helpful because sometimes, you might get a better sense of what it is your partner is looking for. If they, I mean, you might not want to hear that either, but maybe you do, and maybe that's helpful. Um, the other part is getting a clear picture and just being able to work towards something together, I think can be helpful.
Yeah, like, and I know the miracle questions, like, I think is designed to figure something else out.
Yeah.
Um,
Greg, I actually just had a thought, and this is just because I don't want to lose the thought, nothing to do with your episode right now. Um, we should do a couples therapy episode.
okay. I have my thoughts on it. It's difficult. It's hard work. But yes, I do, because you want to know what? I almost, not to kind of go down that rabbit hole, but like there's a lot that I'm kind of like, if you like, a lot of time you see couples coming in for therapy and like one person is convinced that it's over and the other person's trying to get them back, and it's like, I don't think that that's a good time for couples therapy. I
Yeah.
really, I think
But
like,
I think it's kind of it is probably a commonplace because I think it's like this is the last resort before we just call it quits.
yeah, no, and a lot of times I think it's someone being like, "Will you go to couples therapy?" And they're like, "Fine."
I think it's every time. That's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fine. Okay, I'll try
I
it.
got I got a great one right now. It's like supposed to be the whole family, but it's really turned into couples, and it's been a lot of fun. I actually kind of enjoy. Well,
I
at
gotta,
least I enjoy this couple and the family so far. So I know they're not all that that enjoyable.
I mean, so essentially that is my interventions, but I would like to add something. I'm not going to go too deep into this because some of this is I'm saving. But that idea that like there's something very important about stories. So stories I will use. We all know that. Fables, allegory, lately a lot of observing nature. Um, of course, metaphors and Dave, who doesn't love a good aphorism, quotes, like things like that that really kind of jumpstart it. So I guess what I'm saying, like a part of therapy, and like it or not, Dave, this is a part of your therapy too, especially in the beginning, when we were first starting out, is bibliotherapy. So kind of getting someone like noticing that someone would benefit from a book, probably The Alchemist or Man's Search for Meaning. That's
Yeah, yeah,
like one of those two. So I mean, because I think like sometimes either borrowing from a book or telling a story, there's something about story and hearing a story and hearing something that someone else went through and how they've overcome it that's like hopeful, and also you learn it better, you remember it more. It's like, hey, behavioral activation, let's write this down. Hey, functional analysis, you know it's not, it's like, well, hey, look, when this happened to this person and they behave this way, it's like you're coming outside of yourself and viewing it in someone else, and that you can, it's so much, always so much easier. That's why I think group therapy is very effective, because it's like it's so hard for you to see the things or act on the things that are going wrong in your own life, but you can point it out in someone else pretty quick,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Oh,
for
dude,
sure.
I wouldn't do that. You're doing this like this. Oh, that's kind of not a great idea. Like I have you tried this, right? We've all can like look at someone else's life and be like, oh, that's where they're making the mistake, and it's a lot harder to do with our own life, for a myriad of reasons. One being probably a lot of self-deceit, which Dave and I have talked about in the past. Um, but yeah, there's something about stories that really really helps, and we're all kind of drawn to that. At least I am. Um, and I think as far as interventions go, Dave, that's all I've got, just five.
Okay.
But I kind of like looked around too. I saw ones that I had forgotten about. Like I remember being. Do you remember in that classroom, the professor did the empty chair with me, and I was like, wow, this is like, he just did the empty chair with me like in front of the whole class and wanted me to be like super vulnerable.
Was I in that class?
You might have been. You
I
might
don't
not.
think I was. I
Oh my
don't think
God,
I was.
this is crazy. Like really, you want me to kind of like go like pretend that empty chair was like an X.
I I am not gonna lie. I've tried doing empty chair. So for people listening, empty chair is essentially you're literally sitting next to an empty chair, and in that empty chair, you are envisioning someone of importance in your life is sitting there, and you are going to interact with them as if the therapist is not there at times, or the therapist might actually say, "Oh, wait a minute, a guest has arrived. Oh, look who it is, and take a seat." And they actually like,
I'll tell you what.
kind of navigate it, which I'm sure you've seen as well, right? It's
Yeah.
super uncomfortable in the role of either person a lot of times. Now, I will say I've actually had some people look at that empty chair and talk to it as if that person was there, but I've never gotten someone to actually like fully act as if they're talking to someone. Like they've shown me what they would say, but I know that they were, does this make sense? They were doing it, but like to show me what it
David
would look
would
like.
probably tell them this and say this.
Like they actually acted like they were talking to someone, but I know they were, but like the intention was like, hey, all right, I would do something like this. They didn't actually like envision somebody sitting in that chair. You know what I mean?
No, and maybe there's some value to it, because like maybe in front of someone else, their behavior would be different, and so they're like a little bit more mindful of the way that they would talk to them, and then maybe that would kind of come through when they are talking to that person. I don't
Yeah,
know, maybe that's a stretch. But oh, what about primal screaming? I've always wondered about that.
never done that.
There is one thing I wanted to talk to you
Why
about.
didn't you? Why didn't you bring up inducing a panic attack?
Oh, I mean, I just figured that would have been part of exposure, but yeah, inducing a panic attack for sure. I mean, see, I guess I would have. I guess I was thinking like that's very specific to you know,
Panic attacks.
yeah. So of course, panic attacks. We all love that. I mean, I've I gave someone the episode the other day. People have really been helped out by that panic attack episode.
Yeah.
I think it's called Panic Attacks, but it's a good episode and it's useful. And that'll walk you through it. So yeah, there's that, and then there's so many. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I oh there's this new thing like not new but like the ear acupuncture thing. I'm kind of interested in that. We can get licensed in that.
Yeah, we can.
Just poke people's ears.
I'm
Yeah, it's
getting a
something
lot
to
of people asking for the
EMDR. Mhm.
EMDR, which we've done an episode on, and I wish I was certified in it, but I'm not. So I
But
just
that's a
tell
gray
them,
area.
yeah.
It's a gray area because it's like, is anybody? I mean,
Well,
it's
they at least spend the money on it, so
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
they walk away with
yeah. I mean, you, yeah,
a
yeah.
paper and a clicker.
They got the paper. But if you pay enough, I don't mind. Yeah, a paper and a clicker, exactly. So, mm, do it then. It's cool to have something, and this is just psychology. Like if someone's going through like maybe obviously they're going to be dealing with some kind of trauma if they're coming for EMDR, and it's like, hey, look, we're trying something different here. Maybe just the hope, and even if there's a little bit of a placebo, we're trying something different. We're trying something novel, and there's some if the we see evidence of what we expect to see evidence of. So if the person goes in to think, hey, this might work for me, their brain's going to see evidence of that. And if they're like, this shit hasn't worked in the past, and your CBT for your trauma focused CBT is not going to work, or any other sort of like narrative therapy, whatever it is, I've tried it all and it's not going to work, then their brain's going to find evidence of that too. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe giving someone some hope isn't the worst thing.
Another interesting thing to think about is if if anyone listening is in practice somewhere or works in a group practice, sometimes it's interesting to hear how other people see you, or like what they think your like specialty is. Like for example, so in the last like 2 weeks I've done 15 to 20 intakes, gotten a ton of new patients, and some of them have been referred to me by like some of the practicing like psychiatric doctors in the practice or whatever, and like they've referred them, and the patient will come in and be like, "Oh, so and so referred you because they said you were good for helping me with my PTSD symptoms." And I'm like, "I'm the PTSD guy now? Like I didn't know that was me. Like cool.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure." Then he said
You
you
know,
were the one to go to for my PTS to work through the PTSD. I'm like, "All right." And I've had that happen with a few different things, and I'm like, I think they're just making this up now.
well, I don't know. I think like that, and probably I always think of you as like if there's someone with like a kid or something, I'm always like, all right, well, yeah,
Which I'm like, Greg, stop that, dude.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not doing it.
Oh, real quick, and I like this is probably a conversation I was hoping to do on a bonus episode at some point. So behavioral activation for someone who's depressed
Mm,
tends to make sense, right? Um, but I had
sure.
a patient recently say like, well, shouldn't I be like unpacking my past first? And I'm like, I think they kind of like they we can, but like in the meantime, you got to pay bills and you got a ton of stuff you got to get done. So I also need you like functioning in the real world. And so maybe it's like a 50-50 split or something along those lines. But he's almost like disappointed that
It's recently just happened to me. They were talking about how their last therapist never kind of got into like the trauma of their past, and it's like, I mean, and I just kind of talked about, well, there's different like theoretical approaches.
yeah,
Some theoretical approaches don't think that you need to bother with the past at all. I mean, the solution focused in a lot of ways. CPT is not really a trauma focused therapy.
right.
I'm less, it's kind of like, where do you want to be and what's getting in the way, and then we can kind of get you there. But if someone wants to work on that and they feel like that's important, why not, right? Because in some ways it does in like kind of I can see it from both ways. I really can. I think it's useful in some ways, and I think it's kind of all up to the person.
Yeah.
Like, do they feel like it would be beneficial to kind of like go sort of because like obviously with trauma, like some of those be like you know the sort of way that you've adapted to protect yourself, if you're still doing that. and years later there's no danger anymore, and you're still behaving as if there is a danger, then that could be like damaging to relationships and things like that. It can really limit you. Um, but if the person's like hyper aware that their traumas and their past is like affecting them, I don't know. It's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, that's a great conversation for a bonus episode. Is it better to go back, or is it better to look forward?
Or is there space to do both? Like,
Yeah.
why does it have to be a single approach, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think we would agree that there's not.
So this was part one. Next week I will take the reins of sharing my favorite approaches, and between the two episodes, hopefully you will have a nice comprehensive guide to a plethora of strategies that you can utilize on other people, on yourself, or whatever you want to do with this knowledge. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. If you get the chance, please like, subscribe, review, whatever option your platform is giving you. Just do
Love it.
that, and it's appreciated on our end. But also join our Patreon.
Haven't had an Apple review in a while. Let's challenge someone to get into that. Let 'em-
Spotify comments have been pretty steady,
Wait.
for better or worse. So thank you to everybody who's doing that. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Have a great night and enjoy the warmer weather.
I'm not. I've been like sweating this
Me
entire
too.
time.
Me
Like,
too. But I am enjoying the little boost of energy I'm getting now that it's a little bit nicer out. So that's been nice.
yeah, I have
So
like sore throat from an allergy.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, all right, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you later.
All
Bye
right.
bye.